Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast. Hey, it's another year, another time to make some more money, and I've got the course for you. Start the Conversation, Get the Meeting will help your team, both business development, sales development, get into those new cold accounts, whether that function is under marketing or sales. I'll help you with that by starting organic, natural conversations, not pitching. Have people open up with you, build up a connection with them, understand your total addressable market, prioritize it, and put in a system that scales, that's predictable, that works the way you want it to work instead of the old school pitch. Believe me, I've sat through so many of these cold calling seminars, courses, books, and I've been doing it for 30 years, and it's evolved. And what I'm doing today is what's working in today's world. It works naturally, and people are just loving it, getting meetings, closing deals, and doing it without the rejection that is typically there in sales. So check it out at b2brevenue.com under the training tab. You can schedule a call with me. We can talk it over. I'll explain how it works and how we can work together on it. You can buy it per student, or I'll customize it for your particular product and team and coach you through that process. Also, if you're a sales leader and you want predictability, you want direction, momentum, and control with your deals, you can sign up for that course as well. Same type of model. A year-long access to it. It's content, community, and coaching, all included at b2brevenue.com. You can get my free ebook there on how companies make product selections. That's all free. Let's get into the interview, but I want to make sure you're checking out my partners. They're in the show notes. This week, it's Pipedrive and CoVideo. Pipedrive is the new CRM. It's been out for 5 years. I've been using it forever. I love that. It's connected up with your email, your calendar, and now they have team capabilities. CoVideo is the video email system. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. It's the way to break into new accounts. It's so much more engaging than text. Check them out. Also, make sure you're checking me out on LinkedIn, Brian G. Burns on LinkedIn. Let's get into the interview. I'll sum it up at the end. Hey, Brad, thanks for joining us today. As a way of getting started, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, hey, Brian, good to be here. By the accent, probably most people guess I'm Australian, and I've been building our business coaching company now for 26 years. We operate now Action Coach in 88 countries, just opened in Russia, coaching business owners in Russia now. About 1,000 offices around the world. So, a pretty good team of people. And what am I up to now? 17 books, and keep on teaching. Keep teaching. That's what I do. I keep writing, keep teaching, and keep enjoying what I do. And most of the days these days, Brian, I end up buying companies and spreading them around the world. We just bought a company down in Melbourne, Australia, a commercial cleaning business. We're taking to England, and down in Texas, in Houston, we bought a property management company that we're taking across the U.S. So basically an entrepreneur or an educator. I'm not sure what day I am, and I wear different hats on different days.
Yeah, speaking of hats, you wrote a book called Pulling Profit Out of the Hat. What was the impetus for that?
I sit with a buddy of mine, runs a very large company, and a C-level guy, and I'm sitting there with him. He says, some days it just seems like magic the way these companies like IKEA and Amazon, and it's just magic the way they keep growing and making more profit. And I just looked at him and I said, are you serious about that? And he said, well, it seems like magic. I said, magic is just a system. So to make fun of my friend, I wrote a whole book about it, and so showing how exponential growth can actually happen. I think too many businesses settle for small growth when they could actually be looking at massive global growth and domination. So,
and how do companies go about that? What's the secret?
Oh, buddy, the secret. Well, I don't think there is a secret. Well, it's not a secret anymore. I published it, and we hit the Wall Street and we hit the Wall Street Journal and USA Today bestseller. So I don't think it's really a secret anymore. I think the fact is, though, what we looked at, and my co-author Monty, he and I have been coaching business for many years. My team does it now all over the world. And what we looked at is what causes exponential growth, what causes a business that doesn't just grow and plateau. You see too many times we see grow, plateau, or grow and dip even. How do we stay with a company that's actually going to be in that exponential growth? And we found that there's 5 core disciplines that have to be in place to meet the needs of the five main constituents, being obviously the customers, the owners, the community, the employees, and the management team. So, there's five of them: strategy, business development, execution, people, and mission. Those are the five that we focus in on throughout the book. And it's funny, it's the biggest book I've ever written. We're at 392 pages. It arrives on your doorstep. It's like almost 3 pounds. It's like, how did that happen?
Was the advance per pound, or was it?
You would think so, the way it ended up. You know what? One of the things, and having written so many books, it came to a question of how do I make sure that we're not just showing what to do and why to do it, but actually how to get to that stuff. And I think that's why we took a bit of extra time. I mean, we took 2 years to put this one together, doing the research and actually developing concept and then teaching concept, testing it with all of the businesses that we coach. And I think that was sort of part of why it got to be so big. Putting the case studies in there as well helped.
And what do you typically see when you go into a new business? Are they just really good at one of those five? Or two?
What we're finding is it's 2 or 3 is usually where we're finding most of the businesses are placed. If you're an exec, you come from a particular background. Like you might have been from, the finance area, or you may have come from marketing, or, and obviously then that organization is going to have strength in those areas. But then in the other areas, we're going to have a look at it. And the one I find most missing is strategy. Strategy would be missing most. And I know a lot of people think they understand strategy, but if we can just delve for a minute into the 4 core areas of strategy, being leverage, and my definition of leverage is sort of different than most. The mathematical formula is divide to multiply. When I first learned it, I learned, more with less, ever more with ever less. But the way I teach it is do the work once, get paid forever, or at least long term. And when I look at a lot of businesses, they're not structured in that manner. They're not structured to, get a customer and keep them long term. And even if we look at, a simple example that most people understand of strategy, you go back to Apple, where Apple had a great strategy in the beginning of selling a computer, make a computer and sell a computer. And that worked when no one had a computer. The problem for Apple is they built good computers, so therefore no one needed to replace them. And so all of the other computer manufacturers had learned that one early, make sure they got to throw it out in 2 years' time, sort of thing.
Yeah, they got that down, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting when Jobs went away and ran Pixar. I mean, when he bought Pixar, he learned A, good management and leadership techniques, but B, he learned and understood leverage. Make a movie once and sell it forever. Came back to Apple, put him into the music business. And I mean, even smarter than that, Jobs don't even do the work and sell it forever. They've never made a song. They don't make movies or TV shows or apps or anything. And they just take 30 or 40 cents on the dollar for every single one created. That's the genius of Steve Jobs, from a company that was almost bankrupt to the biggest company in the world by employing just one single part of the strategy segment. Part 2 is scalability. In this day and age, buddy, I see if you want scale, and again, my definition of scale is the next sale costs less and gets easier. And in this day and age, for scale to be a realistic part of any business, the consumer has to be able to buy without human interaction. If you have to have human interaction, scale is very difficult. In this world where we're seeing scale is where there's no human interaction. See, if people talk about that Uber came along and they disrupted an industry. No, they didn't. They just removed the human element. They took away the taxi having to have a person. You phone a person, the person calls the radio and finds someone on the radio who does it. And then, does that make sense? Removing the human element increases scale dramatically. And so a lot of that falls into strategy. And then you obviously got opportunity size and marketability. It crushes me to watch companies that should be amazing that, they're just pushing it uphill to sell a product that the market is, they've got to create the market. Like, I remember I bought an alcohol company in the UK. Why? Because, it's real simple. There's all these massive alcohol companies are telling you to buy their alcohol. People already buy it. They already have a budget for it. They already like it. They already want it. Now I just had a home delivered option, kind of like the Uber of alcohol. All of a sudden now people are like, hey, this is a great way to get it. I didn't have to convince them to buy it. I just had to convince them to buy it from me. So taking that core point of strategy and saying, what is the base business model of this organization? What is its expansion model? And it's like, did you ever get to see that movie with Ray Kroc? Was it The Founder?
I love that movie. I've seen it probably 5 times.
I got to see it on a couple of planes, flying all over the world. You get to see these things. And I remember I said, this shouldn't be called The Founder. It should be called The Finder.
Yeah.
He wasn't the founder. He was the finder. But what it showed us is that you got the McDonald brothers, because there's 2 strategies shown in that movie. You got the McDonald brothers, actually 3, because Ray Kroc's middle strategy was going to fail. Until he employed the capital-based strategy of real estate, it was going to fail. But, the McDonald brothers had a strategy of sell burgers. Ray Kroc had a strategy of have a burger joint on every single street corner in America, and then every single corner in the world type thing. It's the same, even back to the strategy of Apple. You could be in the music business and be the guy drumming in a band, or you could be Apple or Spotify type thing. Do you know what I mean? It's like the strategy that you approach changes dramatically the success of the business growth.
Well, that's it. I'm a huge investor in Apple. And because if you take out that services revenue, that app store, that's what a $30 billion business right there.
Yeah. Let's not take that as an also a shareholder at Apple. Let's not take that out ever.
Well, that's it. You take that with a 10 multiple and you add their cash, and it's like, who cares? I mean, they could give the phone away.
Yeah. And I mean, even Apple has to change, my friend. Remember their purchase of Beats, and people are like, oh, why did they buy a headphone company? And why did they pay billions for it? Well, they didn't buy a headphone company. They bought the contracts that Beats had with the music companies so they could get into music rental rather than just having to sell the song each time, because they saw what Spotify was doing. They saw what these other companies were doing and said, hang on, we got to get into that game. And of course, the music companies are like, you beat us last time, not this time, Apple. And so they beat them again. It's like, but these are the things where it doesn't matter what size or shape. If you don't keep updating and upgrading the strategy of your business and don't keep examining it, you end up falling by the wayside. I see a lot of C-suite execs that are not challenging the strategy of their business, so therefore they end up running the same thing and wondering why it's getting harder.
That's it. They try and just lower the price by cutting the margins, and it's a race to the bottom.
Dude, don't. Fastest way to kill a business, discounting.
And then if you look at Peloton, I mean, is that genius or what?
Well, now you've got Fight Camp. You've got all of these copycats. You've got the Mirror. You've got all of these ones, Cross Rope. All of these things that are copying the home gym phenomenon of Peloton. And Peloton's now got into the rowing machines. And I love that.
Treadmill with a huge iPad on it.
Yeah.
For $5,000.
Yeah. It's brilliant.
Right. Did they come up with running or bike riding?
And this is, if you look at discipline too in this is biz dev, where in business development, your sales, your marketing, your customer service, and how those all work together, they're pretty easy to do if you're just having a normal business where you're replacing lost customers. But when you want to have an exponential growth business, your mastery of that stuff and your discipline of business development has to be done in a way that is totally different. If you look at all my other books I've written, like my book called Buying Customers, where I literally outlaid for execs, here's how you actually budget for buying customers. And they're like, what do you mean buying customers? Well, hang on a second. How many new customers do you want a week? And their answer is always, well, as many as I can get. I think that's a stupid answer. Come on. How many do you actually want? How many new customers could you service and not have a reduction in customer service? How many could you handle without having to increase staffing, et cetera, et cetera? So they go away and they work it out. And I say, well, okay, what's your budget to buy those customers? And the moment they start understanding that this is an actual application of an investment, this is, I got to spend $100 to buy a customer who's going to spend $1,000 with me. And that's what the internet's really making popular today in marketing circles, is that whole philosophy of, okay, I'm spending X to get Y.
Well, let's say you spend some time and they've got a strategy that looks really good. They want to experiment. What do you do next?
Well, that's where you got to sit down and say, okay, which of the disciplines are they core strong at? Is it, are they core strong at people? Are they core strong with their execution? Are they core strong with their mission? And let's just touch on each of those so we can understand what I mean by that. People, you don't build the business, the people do. How you build your people determines how they build the business. And how you recruit, hire, train today, mentor, manage, coach, lead, how you do all those things today is shifting. And people are always saying to me, and I'm sure you've heard this, Brian, the whole, these millennials, they're so hard to manage. They're the worst generation ever. Oh my God. I was born in the 70s, and all I remember is people complaining about those who were born in the 60s.
Remember that? The hippies?
Oh my God. Every generation is the worst generation. That's like, no. I did a speech in Dublin, and it was interesting for me being an Australian. Before me was Lady Michelle Mone, who, I got a baroness. Then there's the convict from Australia, and then after me was Sir Richard Branson. And it was real funny, here's the lady, the convict, and the Lord. It's like, this is just hilarious. But I get off stage, Sir Richard comes on, and, we shake hands and say good day. And it was kind of fun because we're wearing the exact same outfit, blue jeans, a black shirt, and a white shirt and a black blazer. It's like, okay, we're doing the twin thing, except I don't have the hair. He's got the locks. And he gets up on stage, and one of the questions he was asked is, have you had to change management for the millennials? He says, no, we've always done good management. I sat there and thought, there you go. Thanks for that, Sir Richard. That's a really nice way to put it. I sit back and look at how people do that today, how you build the humans in your organization, and especially today where we've got almost full employment. If you're not building the humans, double the business, you either got to double the workforce or double the productivity of the existing people. You choose which way you want to go. Employee engagement is still at the lowest it's been, and that's where mission kicks in, my friend. If your mission is all about, I guess it's really simply put, mission is including the word love in a business. Do your customers love buying from you? Do your staff love coming to work? And in this day and age, people are like, I don't know how to keep staff. I still remember. Do you remember ever hiring your first people, Brian? Do you ever remember that?
Oh, sure.
I remember going to my dad. I think I was 20 or 21. And I turned to him, I said, you know what, Dad, I just can't get good people. And my dad's a very blunt human being. And he turns to me and says, Brad, listen, you get the people you deserve. You're an average. Oh, yeah. Yeah, you can laugh now, and I can laugh now. It was not a laughing matter back then. I'm 20, early 20s, and I'm looking at my dad going, you're killing me here. You're killing me. He says, yeah, but Brad, you're an average manager running an average business. Highest caliber employee you're going to get is average. The reality is great people want to work in great companies that are achieving great things. And the mission of the organization has to be greater than just making $1. It has to be more than that. I'm not talking about just an esoteric thing. It's like my company that I run 9 companies that I own, and I do that in 12 hours a week. And I don't say that to brag to anyone, but to teach you that there is a way of doing this where you don't actually work more, your people do. And when I build the people, but I go back to my dad saying that, and I go back to all of this sort of stuff, and it's how I determine the mission of the organization. With Action Coach, when I first started, I sat down and said, you know what, I was 2 years in, I sat down and said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And I wrote the vision of world abundance through business re-education. And I sat down, and that's our mission, to create a massive, abundant world by helping every business person in the world become better at business, because business ain't getting easier. We got to get better at it. And it's interesting, along the way, the number of people who come and say, you know what, that excites me. So I can't motivate people, but I can find people who are motivated to join the mission that I'm on to help go and change the world of business.
And that's different than culture, or is just part of culture?
Culture is part of mission, and building the culture. And it's real interesting. I go into the book about documenting culture and how people can actually document, not just have it on the wall, but actually make it a part of the way the business operates. And, the core, I watch it. And when you see where culture is when you see a merger or an acquisition taking place, and you can actually really see culture come to the fore, the two companies' cultures coming out and going, hey, we don't do it that way here. Well, we don't do it that way here. And you see very clearly the human culture and how to move that. And I just actually recorded a video book, which was kind of weird doing a video book, but I was doing it with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, Mark Thompson, and they're two of the leading guys on executive coaching in the world, and Rich Maloney, my partner in another business, employee engagement, Engage and Grow. And if anyone wants it, by the way, it's free. It's on my LinkedIn or my Facebook page. You can get it on there or on YouTube. Any of those, you'll find it. It's free. And and through doing that, each of the chapters is about 10 minutes. Through doing that, we examine the whole reasoning why employee engagement is where it's at right now. Every exec in the world is seeing the numbers and they know it. And then they go and turn to a technology-based solution. It's like, hang on, you want human engagement and you're using technology to do that. That is just the stupidest thing in the world. Humans need humans. Let's get that clear.
And who do you model after as far as that? Is there a particular company or leader?
Where we started that, the whole Engage and Grow business actually came from a sporting background.
Yeah.
So it was interesting because when you look at sports, and we would go into sporting teams and actually have each team member rate every other team member as whether they are here for themselves or here for the team, and when you go into some of these teams, and we're not quite that vicious when we go into corporates and do that. In a sporting team, you can get away with that level of viciousness, but in a corporate, you got to do it a little bit differently. We actually take 12 weeks to work a corporation through our Red Belt program in that one. And you'd see a team where they'd sit there and literally everyone gets, we had people on teams where every single person on the team rated them a red, which means they are only there for their own benefit. And you look at that team and then you start putting in place things to help people learn to become there for the team. And we actually had one sporting team where literally the coaching staff didn't get involved in this process. And the team went to the owners and said, the captains of the team went to the owners and said, listen, unless our coaches get on board with this, this is not going to work. And they started rating the coaches and they all got red. And interestingly enough, the coaches after a week said, well, we don't want to ever do this again. This is bad. They went to the owners and said, we don't want to do this. The owners fired the entire coaching staff and hired new coaching staff who were on board with the players. It was kind of fun to watch, kind of fun. But yeah, sports breeds that thing. So that's where the knowledge base comes from, watching and building sporting teams do it.
And that's it. And I think that the distinction, I don't know if you've ever studied the inner versus outer mindset, where, because I came out of corporate, several different startup companies that got acquired by big companies. So that culture change that you talk about, where you basically go into the big company and everyone pretends they're on the team, but nobody's on the team.
I loved reading Alan Mulally. Did you ever read the book? There was a great book about Alan Mulally and how he turned around Ford. Because, here's a guy that turned around Boeing.
Yeah.
How much does Boeing want him back right now? And then he goes and turns around Ford, and you sit there and you say, this guy must know something. And you read that book, American Icon, about him. I should actually be selling my book, Pulling Profits, but I'm telling everyone to go and read a book about Alan. But Alan's such a genius as a CEO that, it took him a while, but he got them all onto the team. And as you said, it's very clear in the start of that book, because it was written by a journalist who covered Ford rather than someone who was an insider. And you sit there and you say, dang, it was so obvious that these guys and gals were there for themselves, not for the organization. So, yeah, I think that, overall, when you look at all 5 disciplines, it really is a finding which of the 1 or 2 or 3 disciplines your organization is not strong in, and then building that part of it, I guess.
And how much of it is creativity versus just, working through the system?
Oh, buddy, look, you'd like to think creativity is a massive part of business success, but I really don't think the people who, built Uber were in a creative mindset. They were just like, why can't I get a limo? I need to be able to get a limo. There's 5 limos sitting at this hotel right here. Why can't I get one of them? Well, you got to call the company, and the company's got to then book them, and then you got to do that, and then you got to do this. Why can't I just get one of them? Isn't there an app for that? Yeah, let's just do that. So, yeah, there's a creativity level, but the vast majority of business success, in my opinion, is a science. It is a systematic methodology. When I wrote my book, The Business Coach, way back when, it's got to be 10, 15 years ago now, we had coached 13,000 companies to success before we wrote the book. And it was like, this is the systematic methodology that if you follow this, you will get success in business. And it's like a recipe, I guess. I mean, that's the simplest way I can describe it. And my challenge is most people don't even learn the recipe, let alone follow it.
Well, that's it, because I kind of come from that early stage VC-backed companies. It'd be like 5 to 7. Then after about 5 years, it'd be down to 3.
Yep.
And the products were, probably 10 to 15% different.
Mm-hmm.
Prices were the same, websites were the same. And it did come down to kind of that recipe, that mixture.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where the human element kicks in. It's where all of these things are part of it. And you just sort of see, and it was a great study done. And Mark Thompson, as a venture capitalist up in Silicon Valley, Mark is, he's a coach of, the companies that he invests in, the Pinterests and all of these sorts of things. And Mark quotes a great study that Google did where, and this is a company that can afford to pay the best of the best, hire whoever they want, pay them whatever they need. And their sales teams had a 40% differential in performance levels. Now, what is the 40% differential in performance levels in a company like that? And that's where, we look at that whole Engage and Grow. And if anyone wants to learn that, watch that whole Engage and Grow video book. It's on all my social media if you want to watch it. Mark and Marshall are just geniuses at that stuff. They're just geniuses at it.
Yeah. Well, it's called Price's Law, where it's like the square root of the number of salespeople generate 50% of the revenue. It's kind of like Pareto's principle. And it repeats.
Well, if you look at, I love the whole 80-20 rule. I just think it's one of the most incredible discoveries and explainers of so many things in all things. And, to me, but even like you look at business development is really the 80-20 rule. Your job is to find the 20% that want to buy right now. Your job then is to find the 20% of them that want to buy the next level, and the 20% of them that want to buy the next level up from that, and the 20% of them that want to buy the next level up from that. But if you're not putting 1,000 people in a day at the bottom level, don't expect to get the 2 people at the top level buying the most expensive thing you sell.
And I spend my half my day telling people that not all of them are equal, because that recursive thing that you just did is
first birthday. So it's like right now, the baby, definitely the baby.
Yeah. The least trouble, probably.
Much nicer than the rest of them. But, yeah.
Hey, so if people were to get the book and spend the time in the lifting of the 3 pounds, what would they get out of it?
Look, I think that what they're going to get out of it is a picture of how business is built so that it grows and grows exponentially. They'll get what I tried to do with this is give you the full picture of what it takes to build that organization. And so I think the most important thing is you'll become a better exec. There's no two ways about that. You'll become better at what you do. But I would also suggest that if you're going to buy it and read it, you buy it for all 100 people in your organization or 1,000 execs in your company and share it around so that you understand. That's a good pitch right there. But also it's when people are all on the same page with knowledge, then things move in the same direction.
And that's back to the sports analogy.
Yeah. Well, it's very hard for one CEO to read a book and then translate it to everybody else. Listen, we spent 2 years writing this thing. Don't think you can summarize it and give it to your people. Give them the whole book. Dang it.
And any particular format that you'd recommend? Is it better off in hardback versus Kindle? Is it an Audible?
It's not on Audible yet, so I've got to find a 2-week spot where I can get into a studio and do it. And they're telling me that I should probably give it to an American to read it. So Monty, my co-author, it's like, hey, you're going to get that job if they don't want my Australian accent. Listen, I love the hardback. That's just me. But jump on Kindle. It's right there as well. The reason I love the hardback, we literally invested a ton of money having this thing full graphic design so that everything becomes not just a learning, but a visual of what the learning looks like in practice.
Great. And how about people who want to connect with you and learn more about your companies?
They can jump on actioncoach.com or bradsugars.com or any social media. You'll find me out there. Other than Pinterest, I'm not really that crafty, Brian. I'm not that guy.
Instagram or
yeah, you can find me on Instagram or Facebook or YouTube or LinkedIn or you name it. I mean, these days you got to be on all the platforms because everyone has a favorite, and that's marketing has gotten harder but easier. Harder because you can't just place an ad on a TV channel, but easier because you can get to your niche market real simple and real easy. Even like me being here with you, Brian, it's like people say, why do you go on podcasts and stuff? I said, because of micro marketing. I go and find influencers who have the most incredible relationship with their customer base. By the way, if someone is listening to this for the first ever time, please subscribe. I listened to a bunch last weekend of yours, and this is amazing. You're doing a phenomenal job. Please subscribe to what he's doing.
Hey, I hope you enjoyed that interview. Hey, I want to make sure you're checking out b2brevenue.com. That is where you can get a free copy of an ebook that I did. It's a real ebook. It's not a fluff book. It shows and talks about how companies make buying decisions and how you can influence that from both a marketing and a sales standpoint, how to find all the people that are in the decision path and what they need to see, know, and touch and feel before they make a product selection. If your team needs some coaching, some help, some training, some systems, some processes that do work today, because we know what doesn't work, or you know what doesn't work, I'll show you what does work and how to connect and get into pretty much any account. It includes deal coaching and content community, and I can customize it for your particular company. Just go to b2brevenue.com, look under training, schedule a call with me. We can talk it over, or just sign up. You can pay per month or all at once, whichever makes most sense for your budget. Also, I put out videos pretty much daily on LinkedIn and on YouTube. On LinkedIn, it's Brian G. Burns, and on YouTube, it's Brian Burns Sales. Just search for that if you like to consume some video content. And if you see me on LinkedIn, please put a comment and a share and a like on some of the videos. I really appreciate it. I've got a company page for each podcast. This one, the B2B Revenue Leadership Podcast, where I put both content and humor videos out daily. And tell a friend about the podcast. Really appreciate you listening. Check out the show notes for all the partners and the connections you can make there, the coupon codes for the products to evaluate them, see if they're a right match for you. And we'll see you next time.